Alright, what's up, motherfuckers? Today we're back on a Saturday night building a nice little journal taking app. So you can go in and, this will be my entry for March 2nd today. And, maybe jot down how I'm feeling, whatever it is. I don't know. But you can add as many notes. You can delete. This will be a perfect tutorial for beginners. Sorry, the audio. Okay, this is a perfect tutorial for beginners learning how to interact with not only HTML and CSS like we did in the last video, but today we're going to incorporate something called JavaScript. And with that, you can actually interact with the website. So the first time, we just made something simple. The next time we added some styling with CSS, and this time we were actually able to interact with the website. Use our mouse and click on things that actually, change the way the website looks. And so this is a cool app. It's definitely great for beginners. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, grab some food and all right, let's just dive into it. So, no cuts. That's how we do it on the Josh Mayer channel. So this might be a little bit of a longer video, but I'm hoping that you learn HTML, learn CSS, learn JavaScript to build an app that's actually pretty cool and has some value. So, all right. Go grab some food, and then let's start off with, my trusty untitled folder. I'm just going to make a folder called Journal App, and then open Visual Studio Code. And if you don't know what that is, that's totally okay. You can just go and download it. Just look it up. Yeah, I trust you to go download VS Code on your own. All right, so as always, when we're building these kinds of websites, you start off with your index.html file. That's what pretty much everything is going to do. And so a cool thing on VS Code is you can just give your project some starter code, just like that. You don't really have to. You could type all these things out if you want. These two lines are just unnecessary. So we can delete them, and hopefully this looks pretty normal. And okay, so let's dive into it. If you didn't watch the last video and you have no clue what this HTML is, let me give you just the brief description. So we have these things called tags. So head is a tag, title is a tag, body is a tag, and there are many different names for tags. There's a tag called divs, and you might think is overwhelming. You gotta memorize a bunch of things, but realistically, you could just get away with a bunch of divs. So you could think of just a div as boxes or ways to organize your application. So if we look at the Notes app, basically just everything here is a box, and this is a box, this is a box, this is a box, and they're all just basically divs. You can get more organized than that, but that's really how I think of it. So you have a tag, and it's an opening. You have the opening tag, and then you have a closing tag. And inside that tag, you can put whatever you want. You can put text, or you can put more tags. So that is really all it takes to write HTML. It's writing tags with an open and a close, and then putting text in it. One sec. Okay, I'm back. I'm back 20 minutes into the future. If you don't know who I am or the startup I'm working on, then whatever, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I just got a crazy call from Tosit about what he's up to in San Francisco. Okay. Okay, so where were we? We're talking about HTML. So, yeah, I mean, there's open tags, there's close tags, and there's stuff in between. That's like really all you need to know. A div is just AKA a container for something. It could be more divs or it could be text. And so last time we talked about styling. And so let me open. Don't look. Okay. Let me open the index HTML file. There it is. Okay, yeah. So obviously this looks ugly. And so how do I add some color? Or how do I add some styling? And so let me make this bigger. That is done through CSS. And how you do that is by giving a div a class. So like if I wanted to give this line some specific styling, like I wanted to make this line blue, but I wanted to make this div green, how could I like individually say I want this one blue, this one green? And it's by giving it a class. So the class is just like giving it a unique name so that in your styling, which I'll show you later in a second, you can actually give it an individual styling rule, because you need to be able to apply individual rules to individual divs or containers or whatever it is. And so you can write CSS like in here, but I don't like doing that. And so you can instead in the head. So the head is kind of just like organizational things and like just sort of some metadata on your project, not really actual things that are rendering in there. So don't worry really about this. Like as always, the code will be in the description. So if you want to copy and paste it, that's like probably what I would do too. But basically what this line is saying is that we have a file called style.css, and that is going to house all of our styling rules. So let's go and make style.css. So let's go and make this, there we go. So we have the index.html, which is, divs and stuff in divs. And then we have our styling. So if we want to apply global styling, we can just do background color. Let's go aqua. And bam. But then I could also apply it to all divs and say background color. Let's go bisque. And bam. Okay. And then, so we were talking about classes. So like, let me give this text a class of PP. And then, so if I were to say, so the difference between dot, you just put a dot in front of it if it's a class name. Oops, why do I keep doing that? Oopsie daisy. Okay. And give that a background color of, blue violet. See? Okay, so, that is just really the basics of writing CSS and HTML, and that's all it takes. Like, I promise it's really not more complicated than that. I know that wasn't really fun to follow along with, but those are the basics. So why don't we actually get into writing our journal-taking app? Okay, so let's start off with, if we go back, let's start off with just the structure. And then we'll get into the JavaScript of how, to make things work, like being able to delete and add notes. But for now, why don't we get into just the structure of the app? And so let's just delete all of this bullshit. Let's get rid of all this. Okay, great. So now we're kind of just starting from scratch again. Okay, so in the body, I want to first add a button, and so it kind of does what you would expect it to do. It's an actual button that, if you remember, is on the top of the page. So yeah, and I'll just say add note, and so that is our button with class add. So we can go into the styles and then give it some styling. So let us see. first, I'm going to paste in some global styling. Like I said, the code is in the description, so don't feel like you have to type out everything, especially if it's repetitive. I will say though, like you'll get more used to what CSS stuff like corresponds to things the more you write it. So if you do want to write it, it's not gonna hurt. Okay, so here's the ad. Position. Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna go through and explain it. Like you're just gonna get used to it. That's kind of the only. You just gotta like jump into it. That's the only way. Like I think it's just be boring if I explain things. But I will explain here what this active means. Active is basically just saying when it's clicked, we're going to do this. Versus up here when, this is just kind of like the normal state, the all-time state. Great. So you can see the difference of when you're applying styling and not applying styling. So that's exactly what that does. You can go through and just kind of change some things to see what happens, but that's kind of all you need to do. Okay, so why don't we write the code for the individual journal entry? Okay, cool. So let's start off with, we're going to have a div. And this is going to be like the toolbar on the top. And then inside that div, I want 2 buttons. The first one is going to be the edit button. And so like obviously I'm naming them according to like what they do so that in my CSS file I can, keep things organized. And this one will be delete. Okay, so we have our edit and delete button in the toolbar. And then under that, we need to wrap this actually in its own div, right? So if this is one big journal entry, we need it to be all inside of one div, right? Because it's all one big box. So this is all just one journal entry with or note or whatever. And so inside of there, under the toolbar, we want to have a div of main. And then under that, we want to have a text area. So a text area is basically just like where you're allowed to type, where I want to, where I can type text into. Okay, I don't know if it needs a class name. Okay, so let me actually get to this in a second and let's see. Okay, so we've written all these divs with these classes, but we haven't actually assigned any styling yet, so obviously it's not going to look good. So why don't we go back to style.css and then write these style classes in. So let's see. Okay, so starting off with just the note. We say background color of white and you know what? We're just going to copy and paste it, which don't hate me. Okay, so that is what the note is. Let's see. Now we've added a white background, as you can see, a little shadow that's not really doing anything because it's black. And then margin, which is basically just like padding, doesn't matter. And then the height and width of I actually wanted the width to be, I want it to be a little wider. Let's say 600. And there we go. Maybe 500. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So then now, inside of the notes, we have the toolbar. So we want to apply these styling. So now it's basically just aligning them to the right. And then we have that text. Oopsie daisy. So these buttons are a little ugly, so let's apply some styling to those buttons. And then the text area, which I commented it out, so we'll get back to later, and then just some things. Yeah, this is all related to the text area. Let's go back. So now we have some styling. We're starting to see a note here. So let's go back. A text area is basically where you can just type and input text. A div, I can type text here, but if I want my user to actually be able to type like we were before, like if I want to be able to type here, if I want to be able to type, then we need a text area. So if you can start to see the difference here, the div is displaying text, and the text area is where the user is typing text. So that's an important distinction that if you don't wrap your head around is fine. I think you'll just start to see it in a second. So right now we're kind of limited in the functionality. Like I can copy and paste and have a bunch of notes, and that's awesome. But what happens when I want to add a note or delete a note or edit or type or, yeah, so you can see that's the text area. There's the div on top of the text area. I should have explained that. So a text area is you can actually type, when you're in the application, not like in the code. Okay, so now we have like all of the elements in our app ready to go, but we can't actually do anything. We can type, but if I refresh the page, everything is going to go away. And there's only only 3 notes. I'm limited to 3 notes, and I can't do anything to them. And so that is exactly where JavaScript comes in. And it may sound like complicated or whatever, but it's really just gives you the functionality to do things like, okay, I want to add a note, or I want to delete a note, or I want to be able to edit this note. And I don't want to have to come here and do it inside the code every time, because what happens when I publish the website and I want somebody to come and use it? Well, like they need to be able to add and create notes on their own from the website. Like they're not going to be able to see the code. So we want to give them that functionality. And so that is exactly where JavaScript comes in. So let's start off by making a JavaScript file where we can write that code. And so like similar to where we linked the style sheet or the CSS file, we're gonna do just like basically the same thing for the JavaScript. And so it's not a link this time, it's just a script with a source, but it's like really doing the same thing. And it's just like that. So now any JavaScript we write in here will be ready to go to interact with our like actual whole application. Okay, great. We're making great progress. So now it's time to go and dive into, let me delete this guy. Now it's time to dive into, the world JavaScript. Actually, hold on, not quite yet. We need to put in, actually, hold on, give me a second, guys. Okay, yes, it's time to dive into the world of JavaScript. And so I'm just gonna start writing it out, and then hopefully, but as we get a little bit deeper into this video, you'll start to see some patterns, and it will like start to kind of come together for you. But what these 2 lines are doing, actually, this may get a little complicated. Okay, all right, so let's start off with this first line. So what this is doing is just saying document kind of just represents the whole page, like the whole app. Like document is just this whole website. And so in this website, I want to, and if you've never done any programming and you're like, this is a word, but then there's a period, and then there's another thing, and there's parentheses, and then there's a semicolon, and it's like confusing me. Like it's definitely confusing right now, but just you gotta stick with it like just a little bit, and I promise it's gonna like make more sense. Okay. So this is just saying in our app, I want to get an element. So all of these are elements. Like that's, you could kind of use that to classify. Like a div is an element, a button is an element, a body is an element. Like same thing, but elements have opening and closing and shit in between, and that's all it is. Okay, so we want to get an element by ID, right? So we have this ID. So it's kind of like a class, but just something different. So we want to get this button, and we had the ID of add. So that's all we're doing. We're just going to get that element, and then we're going to save this into something called add button. So now add button, like these are equal. Like if you were in math class and something said x equals 7, now anytime you see x, you can just, it's 7. So that's all we did here. This line's a little more complicated. Let's just come back to it. So if we don't have any notes, let's go, no. Okay, so fuck. Add new note, which is not a function we've defined yet, but we're gonna get to it. Okay, so then we're gonna say in our new button that variable that we just created, we want to add an event listener called every time you click it, we want to fire off this add new note thing. We want to execute add new note, and so let's define add new note. And define it little text that's empty. Okay, so same thing. We want to talk in this document. We want to instead of getting an element, we want to create an element, we want to create a div. If you remember from the HTML file, there's a bunch of divs. So that's all we're doing. We're just doing that, but from inside of JavaScript land instead of inside HTML land. Like I can use JavaScript to make my own div just from this other from inside of here. And so I also want to give it the class of note. So basically that's literally the same thing of me making a div and then saying class note, or you get the point. But instead of just typing in the HTML file, I can actually do it from inside of a JavaScript function, which is the whole point of writing JavaScript. And it definitely looks really ugly, which is why not a lot of people use JavaScript in this way anymore. But it is a great way to learn how things work on the web, and so glad you're here. Okay, so I'm just gonna paste this in, and if you take a look, actually, we want to delete this. Okay, actually, let me demonstrate this point a little bit better. Okay, so we had our notes sort of written in the HTML, but if you were paying attention, what we just did was we made a div with class of note, and then in there we were going to put something. And so we're essentially just recreating this whole thing, but inside of our JavaScript file. And that should make some sense because it's in the add new note function. So we're essentially taking this note that we made earlier, and then we're describing a function or a way of every time we say add new note, we want to basically build this HTML. And so we made a div with class of note, and then we put all this stuff inside of it. So why don't we just cut this and delete this line, because we already are working on it in the JavaScript file. So inside of that div, we want to put exactly what we had before. And so now every time we call, or every time we say add new note, then we're gonna actually just make what we just had before. And then so I'm going to change these bottom two lines a little bit, and you'll see why later. Just hold on to the suspense a little bit. Okay, so now I'm just gonna start to pick up the pace a little bit because we're starting to get a little bit more familiar with JavaScript. And if you get a little lost, that's totally okay. The point of this tutorial is that you like just get your feet wet and just dive into some so like making a cool app. And so at the end of it, you can just say that you did it. Whether or not you like really understand it is totally okay, because this is just as the point is to like get into it. Okay, so we essentially just, these things are essentially just saying inside of our note that we just created, I want to select the edit, the delete, and this and this. So we basically are just like extracting these so that we can manipulate them from JavaScript land. And so next, we're going to say inside of the text area, we want to put text. And text is kind of like an input that we're going to get every time we say add new note, because that should be the stuff that we're typing in. This is text, so like every time I'm typing in, that will end up being inside of this text, or that is what represents text. Okay, so next we're going to say on the delete, every time the delete button is clicked, I want to remove note, which is basically just saying we had this note thing here and we're just gonna like go and delete it. And update ls we will get to later because we have not defined it. And then same thing or similar thing here, every time I'm typing, we're gonna get the value, which this is just saying like give me the text that the user typed. And then we're going to do a little bit of special magic here. It's just marked, is basically just putting in a format we can use. And then I want to put that inside of the main.inner HTML, which is the same thing as just, we have this div with class main, and I'm just going to put something inside it, and I'm just going to put text inside it. So like, that's exactly what this text is here. Okay, great. And then, so now we have created our note, and then we want to just put it into the document or put it into the web page. That's exactly what this line is doing. It's like we've created this note with the HTML, and then we've got what the user is inputting and putting it into the main, or the div with the main class, and then we just put it in, just like put it in. Okay, and so finally I'm picking up the pace really quickly because, yeah, it's bedtime for me, low-key. We're going to make this function called update ls, which is just saying we're going to get all of the text areas. That's where we're typing things. And then like for all of those, we just want to put like a new note. And then we're going to put it in local storage, which maybe is a thing for another time, but essentially it's just like, how can we save this? And like if I reload the page, like everything's going to delete, which is annoying. So how can I like save it? And it turns out like your browser saves data on behalf of webs, like saves some stuff on behalf of websites, which is why it's like if you turn dark mode on, like it stays in dark mode. Or like if you log in somewhere, like you'll stay logged in. That's because like you can actually save a little bit of data inside of a browser if you didn't know, which is great. So that kind of brings us back to the second line here, where we're getting things from the browser. So here we're saving things to that local storage, or that like just like data in the browser, and here we're gonna get it. that makes sense. Okay. And this is saying just if there are some notes that we just got from the browser data, we're gonna create a note. Whoopsie, there should be note in here. Okay, we should be creating like notes for all of the things that we found in the data. Okay, so they think there is one final thing that we both need to copy and paste into our file, and it's just this line. It's so that we can format the things that come from local storage or from the user input and be able to put it inside of the thing. Okay, and so let's try, and then no, it does not. It does not work. Oh, yes, it does. Oh, shit. Okay, fire. So, Yup. All right, baby. And there we go. That is awesome. Okay, cool. So we can add a new note. And so, yeah, that is like a primer into what it takes to write a little bit of JavaScript, a little bit of CSS, and a little bit of HTML to make something that anybody can use. Okay, so now let's pick up the pace again. And so this is great. I can use this, to jot down my notes before I go to bed. But what if like my friends want to use it too? I want to text them a link so that they can also use it. Like this is just on my computer. I want to share it with them. So you can go to this website called Netlify. It's free. Not sponsored. And like literally just drag and drop the fuck. Okay. Just drag and drop your folder that we were working in before, and like magic, I think it should work. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so as you can see, this is like a real link. I know it's ugly, but I could copy this and go and text this to my friend right now, and they could go use my dope journal app. Okay, so thanks for sticking along. I hope it was fun to code with. I tried to go quick just so you could get everything done. And yeah, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.